insisted Catherine Sapone did not lobby him for a special envoy role. He also said he did not feel pressured by the former minister over the job. Social Democrat TD Gary Gannon is a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's unhappy with Minister Coveney's answers.
No, not in the slightest. The Minister apologised to us today for the misleading answers he gave us last week. I think he's going to have to apologise again, because his answers today didn't only stretch the truth, they absolutely annihilated it. He wanted us to believe today that Catherine Sapone was thanking him for a job that didn't exist, was asking him for a start date for a job she wasn't offered.
There's been a significant rise in the points requirement for most third-level courses this year. It's driven by big demand for college places and record high Leaving Cert results. Students received their first round offers this afternoon, and the CAO received over 6,500 more applicants this year than in 2020. Professor Paul O'Doherty, chairman of the CAO, says this year's grade inflation means some people who got the points for high demand courses are still missing out.
But it is certainly a consequence of the grade inflation and the bunching towards the top end, that actually some people then are sitting and looking at their neighbour who got exactly the same points for exactly the same course, and unfortunately the neighbours got in but they haven't.
The 5-day moving average of COVID-19 cases has reduced by 24% in the past 2 weeks. It now stands at 1,382 compared to 1,815 a fortnight ago. 1,470 new cases were reported this evening, with 367 COVID-19 patients in hospital and 59 in intensive care. The border counties of Monaghan, Donegal, Cavan and Leitrim have the highest incidence rates. And 864,000 cigarettes have been seized at Dublin Port today. The haul is estimated to be worth €613,000 and was discovered on board a vessel that had arrived into Ireland from Rotterdam. The cigarettes were concealed within the load, which was labelled as railway sleepers. It's 7:02.
News Talk Weather.
Thanks to Ryanair. Need a break but not sure where to go? With Ryanair's new Flight Fare Finder, you'll always get the best choice and deals.
Staying mostly dry with clear spells, becoming mild and muggy overnight, with some showers developing in parts of Connacht and Leinster. Light easterly winds with lowest overnight temperatures of between 13 and 17 degrees Celsius. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
This is News Talk.
You're very welcome along to tonight's Off the Ball. We've got live commentary coming up from the Aviva Stadium at 7:45. Portugal currently sitting top of Ireland's Group A after their 3-0 win away to Azerbaijan. Serbia could potentially join them on 13 points in 5 games if they were to beat Stephen Kenny's side in the game, which is coming up at 7:45. The Republic of Ireland team is in ahead of that game. Ireland have made 4 changes. On commentary for us in about 45 minutes time will be Stuey, Byrne and Stephen Doyle. Stephen is with us firstly. Stephen, how are you getting on?
How you doing, Will? I'm okay, thank you. Yourself?
I'm good. Tell us about these changes, because we were expecting them. I was listening to you in OTB AM this morning discussing potential inclusions. You were talking about Alan Brown coming into start, and 4 changes in all from that game against Azerbaijan at the weekend.
Absolutely, Will. Yes, it's Alan Brown does come in along with Jeff Hendrick and Jamie McGrath into midfield, and Jeff Hendrick. And then as well, Andrew Omabamidele comes in to make his second appearance in an Irish shirt. So they're the 4 changes. The players dropping out of the Irish team, of course, Seamus Coleman is injured, so he misses out. And as well as that, then Jason Malumbi, Aaron Connolly and Troy Parrott. Of course, we've heard since as well, Aaron Connolly is also injured. So Malumbi and Parrott, the only 2 players to make the bench. So we're looking at the Irish team, Will, setting out as a 3-5-2. Gavin Bazzuto in goal, Andrew Omabamidele with Shane Duffy and John Egan as the back 3. Matt Doherty on the right, James McLean on the left, and then it's McGrath, Cullen and Hendrick with Brown playing just off Adamida.
It's another different system, Stephen. Again, it's going with 3 centre-backs. Doherty switching over to right full back as opposed to playing at left wing back in the last couple of games, but it has a very different feel about that midfield to the weekend, and also the shape of the attack from the weekend too.
Yes, absolutely. And in fairness, Stuey will go into more detail. I'm kind of robbing his analysis work from the weekend, but he did feel that with Jason Malumbi kind of tearing up and down the pitch, that it was leaving Josh Cullen a little bit stranded at the weekend against Azerbaijan, Will. So I think getting Jamie McGrath, Cullen and Hendrick in there together will pack out this midfield against a very good Serbia side, and we know they've got very good central midfielders there as well as attacking wingers. And to have Alan Brown just playing off Adamida there as well, you know, we could see maybe Jamie McGrath going in there behind the striker as well. Jamie McGrath, you know, who's got so much experience both playing in Europe for Dundalk and also with St Mirren over the last couple of seasons. He's well able to get on the ball and hold on to possession for Ireland. That's going to be really important here today, Will, because we know Serbia is the better side coming here, would be expected to have a lot of possession. But if we can get a player like Jamie McGrath on the ball to hold on to the ball for stages for Ireland, bring other players into play, I think that could be really, really important.
Well, Stuey, to ask you about that midfield, are you happier with the balance there? A lot of plaudits for the way that Jamie McGrath played, particularly away to Portugal last week too.
Yeah. I mean, probably two of the main issues I would have had from the game on Saturday would have been the fact that I felt Cullen was isolated, as Stephen just articulated. I felt Malumbi was just a little bit too keen to get around the pitch, and at times Azerbaijan were kind of playing through it centrally, primarily because Cullen was effectively isolated and he was getting played around. So I think he's addressed that tonight by bringing Hendrick back in, who I felt played very well away to Portugal itself, and Cullen just had a very good understanding, and Hendrick is less likely to leave that central position. He'll kind of form a good bond with Cullen, and we should be a little bit more difficult to play through centrally. The other issue I would have had with the game the other night was primarily with Connolly and to a lesser extent Parrott. I felt the two of them were playing as a left and a right of a front three, and they were pushed too high up the pitch. Okay, so effectively they were standing beside the fullbacks, too easily marked, found it very difficult to get themselves into any space. They were too high up the pitch. I think with McGrath coming in and Brown coming in, you'll see them dropping a little deeper, because they'll naturally drop deeper. They won't want to squeeze as high up the pitch as maybe the likes of Connolly and the Parrott will. So for me, that addresses that. The third big one is something that's just down to each individual player. Apologies, and that's converting chances to goals. You know, you can't. That's something that the players have to take on individually, because we created the chances the other day, we just didn't score.
The public address is really drowning out the two guys at the Viva Stadium. We'll go back over to them in a moment. Richie McCormick, I'll say good evening to you firstly.
Young Will, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's kind of one of those things, Richie. It's amazing how this country reacts. Last week against Portugal, right up until 87, 88 minutes, everyone's talking about one of the best performances since Euro 2016, maybe one of the best away performances since the qualifier in Paris. Everyone's in great spirits after that game, despite the two late goals from Cristiano Ronaldo. Then there's a not perfect performance against Azerbaijan at the weekend. The 3 points aren't secured, and we seem to flip our opinion on the Republic of Ireland team entirely.
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily flipping, but it's more a case of both sides of the argument become more emboldened and louder in their opinion as regards what side of the fence they sit on with Stephen Kenny. And like I mentioned on the show last night when I was talking to Dan, like it's become one of these Trump Brexit issues whereby you have two polar sides, and neither of whom are ever going to be happy with the eventual reality of what plays out, because they're never going to get exactly what they want. And there is, you know, a middle ground there that kind of sees this situation for what it actually is, which is a young side being developed, trying to come through games. I'll play the clip in a minute, but Stephen Kenny mentions that, you know, we're talking about the Portugal performance. The Portugal performance doesn't become a bad one just because we lost. There were a couple of defensive lapses that caused those goals, but ultimately, like, there's nothing about that performance in Faro that suggests that we were, you know, a really distant second best side. Similarly in Serbia, back in March, I mean, people are almost going to forget now how well Ireland played for vast swathes of that game over in Belgrade. Those things don't disappear. It's those home matches against the so-called lesser lights that have let Ireland down, and there were opportunities to score. I wouldn't take Kenny's assessments that, you know, we should have won 3-4-1 or whatever on Saturday night, and similarly against Luxembourg, but there were chances to win each of those games that should have been taken and they weren't, and that's the stuff that you learn from. The stuff that you take with you and that you'll use are those performances in Belgrade and that performance in Faro, because they are very much useful to what this side is trying to do from here on in.
Yeah, and even last couple of hours, Rich, you've been watching Portugal in Baku against Azerbaijan. Their performance was not too dissimilar to how the Republic of Ireland played, because Azerbaijan played with two very deep banks of four, and we're trying to hold on from the very start of the game with the system that they put out. Portugal got the ball wide, they whipped in crosses. The difference was that Portugal had that little bit of extra quality up front to convert the three chances to win.
Yeah, their front three tonight was Diogo Jota, Andre Silva and Bernardo Silva, all of whom scored. And to be fair to each of the players that started on Saturday, Aaron Connolly, Troy Parrott and Adamida are not Bernardo Silva, Diogo Jota and Andre Silva. It's a fact of life. Add to that, they've got the creativity of João Moutinho in midfield and Pelini as well, and Bruno Fernandes, of course, too. That's a side that is going to break through anybody, no matter how deep they sit and no matter how many banks of four they want to put in front of them. We don't have that level of player. That is the reality, and that's not going to change if the manager changes. We're not going to have a team of Premier League regulars if Stephen Kenny suddenly finds himself out of work tomorrow morning. We're not going to have a team with a guaranteed goal scorer if Stephen Kenny finds himself out of a job because of the result against Serbia tonight. That's just a plain reality, and it's something that Kenny is going to have to deal with and have to find a workaround towards. And I think tonight could be a start. He hasn't offered much up front. Adamida is going to be asked to do a lot. Alan Brown similarly is going to be asked a lot in support, and Jamie McGrath too. You'd imagine is going to be the bolter from midfield. But the key, I think, will be, as Stuey mentioned, for Hendrick and for Cullen to sit and not offer any opportunity for the ball to be fed to Alexander Mitrovic, because he's proved in this group so far he's deadly. 7 goals, by far and away the top scorer in the group, and the most dangerous threat that Serbia have to offer tonight so far.
Yeah, he scored 2 incredible goals against Ireland in the reverse fixture in that 3-2 defeat as well. The news round is with thanks to Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Richie, we are starting with the team news and the build-up towards the Republic of Ireland's game against Serbia.
Yeah, just 3 of the side that started that game in Belgrade back in March start tonight's qualifier at the Aviva Stadium. As Steve-O mentioned, Andrew Omobamjeli makes his first international start, while Jeff Hendrick, Jamie McGrath and Alan Brown also come into the side. For the Serbs, we should note that Mitrovic was a doubt due to a facial injury, but he has been cleared to start up front for Dragan Stojkovic's side. As I mentioned, under renewed criticism of his reign, Kenny has defended his side's performances thus far.
We would have wanted the results to be better for sure. We would have wanted results to be better for sure. So does that mean that if we'd have won 2-1 the other night and we got that late, and or 1-0, that that everything was great or everything was okay after Portugal and we won? But because we didn't, it's a catastrophe. It's just a volatility between how people felt after Portugal and seeing the level of performance, which Irish teams haven't played with that level of confidence in terms of Portugal or Serbia in many years, like away from home like that. But what we've got to do is just be better than them home games against, obviously got to be much more, we've got to score goals against teams at home, like we haven't against Azerbaijan, for example, the other day. We just got to 1. So I think there is a lot of progress being made. I know you can point to statistics, and that's fair enough.
Well, hopefully the noise at the Aviva Stadium has died down somewhat. The PA was up at around 11 just a few minutes ago. But Stuey, Byrne, you were getting drowned out by the PA just a few moments ago. But what did you make of Stephen Kenny's comments, Stuey, yesterday, where he was defending his position? It is just the one win, and not a competitive win, in the first 15 games in charge. But he's arguing that there's been progress over the last 12 months of games.
To an extent, I do agree. I think there has been progress. There's almost we've had to have a sort of a 1 step back to make 2 steps forward of a sort of a scenario. Now we haven't made those 2 steps forward yet, as of yet. But I think what he's been trying to do with this squad, and especially with the young players that are coming through, and they are extremely young. You only have to look at the likes of Troy Parrott and Aaron Connolly. Coming out of the 21s and Malumbi as of others. He's trying to kind of, I suppose, coach these guys. These guys aren't playing regular football. I mean, you take, for example, Connolly and Parrott the other night. I know Connolly seems like he's been around a long time, but in relative terms, he's still a very young, raw footballer, and he's still only learning the game. And being asked to play, left of a front three, and Parrott being asked to play right of a front three, that's quite technically a difficult role to play when you're naturally a centre forward. It takes years of experience and learning, making mistakes to be able to learn to play in that particular role. But these are the things that I think maybe they are going a little bit unmissed when you hear the critics coming in talking about how Ireland are playing and so on and so forth. Look, I think what's happening at the moment, Will, is there's a more and more of a division starting to come here between the message that Stephen is trying to get out and the brief that he thinks he has, which he has effectively probably taken on himself, and the brief that maybe what the FAI want. I'm looking at the programme notes now, and you've got Jerry McInerney, the president of the FAI, talking about the return of normality of Irish sport, return of spectators in the grounds, coming out of COVID. No mention of any sort of a 4 or 5 year plan, nothing of that at all. And then of course you have the CEO Jonathan Hill, who is speaking about coming into phase 2 of a strategic development plan for 2022 to 2025, a document that will shape the values and the ambitions and the targets for the association and for Irish football for the next 4 years. But he's talking about this coming out in the next 3 months, so almost like they're not, I don't know, I'm not trying to create any kind of controversy, but they're not overly committing to anything just yet. And then Stephen, in his message, is completely talking about the difficulties around Brexit and the whole, I suppose, dynamic for the pathway of Irish footballers, whether it be to England or to be top-level football. So there's this message, one message coming from the manager, and there seems to be a different message or no message at all coming from the association.
Do you reckon, Stuey, that disconnect might come from the fact that Stephen Kenny was technically appointed by the previous regime? Because Stephen Kenny seemed quite clear in that answer, which was picked up by all the newspapers today, about building towards the 2024 European Championships qualifiers. It's been interpreted in two different ways by the media today. On the one side, it's Stephen Kenny has come out and defended himself, and it's about a long-term plan and not nearsightedness. And in some quarters of the media, it's been interpreted as the FAI have a very different vision to Stephen Kenny, and that Stephen Kenny is under serious pressure tonight.
So, short answer, Will, yes, I do think that's a big problem here. The fact that Stephen was appointed under the previous association, whom are now all gone and forgotten about, let's hope. But, of course, you have a manager now that is effectively working under what he felt was his brief and what was the scope of his role. And then you have a new board or a new association effectively coming in who have remained quite quiet, I would have to say. Now they'll defend their position probably to say, well, look, we have to get our feet under the table and get the lie of the land and so on and so forth. But I just don't think it's good enough at this stage. I think, look, the board doesn't have to come out and back Stephen Kenny, right? But what they do have to come out and they have to at least clarify or agree with what he is trying to do, and that is trying to blood young players, trying to put in a longer term view, trying to change the way we play football, and so on and so forth. Because I'll repeat myself here, because it doesn't necessarily, it's not Stephen Kenny or go back to Sam Allardyce or Mick McCarthy, whatever the case may be. If the plan is collectively to blood young players, bring them through from under 17s, under 18s, under 19s, under 21s, bring them through the system, try and get as many players as you can through to the senior team. If that is the plan, then brilliant. Communicate that message to everybody so that the spectators, all the stakeholders understand, but don't leave one man out on his own to hang. And that's what's happening at the moment. And and I think this is where you're getting the mixed message. You're hearing messages from supporters saying, I feel sorry for him, but and so on and so forth. And that's why, because he's the only one talking about this, other than, of course, the I would say the educated football people who realise that the game is up for Irish football. We have to now develop from underage and bring them through. You can't get players. The English model system is gone. It's broken. It doesn't work anymore, and it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. So we have to start seeing players coming through 18, 19 years of age, coming through the 21s, coming through the League of Ireland, because that's the only show in town.
Well, opinions very much divided, including on our text line this evening on 53106. Richie and his gang of cheerleaders in OTB should have to read Philip Quinn in the Irish Daily Mail today. Educate yourselves about impartial journalism. Coming in from Michael on the text on 53106, Richie.
In response to that, there was a really good piece that Ger did this morning on OTB AM whereby he dissected the split, let's just say, among some of the more old school football journalists on the beat and some of the people who'd be more clued in as regards the coverage of Stephen Kenny and his tenure so far. So thank you for your text Who was it there who sent it in? Michael, I would suggest that you read other journalists yourself and have a look at what's actually going on there.
Right, go on, Richie. Educate us on what's happened with the Ireland 21s today.
They drew. They were held to frustration in Doyle today. They drew their latest European Championship qualifier 1-1 with Luxembourg. UCD's prolific Colin Whelan gave Jim Crawford's side the lead 20 minutes from time, but Dylan Quete slotted on a penalty to level for the hosts with 6 minutes on the clock. Meanwhile, the under-17s were beaten 2-0 by Mexico in the second of their friendlies at Turner's Cross earlier today. Bad news for Dara O'Shea. West Brom have confirmed the defender is going to miss the next 4 to 6 months. The defender sustained a fractured ankle and ligament damage during last week's 2 defeat away to Portugal. The injury rules O'Shea out of the remainder of the World Cup qualifying campaign.
Bad news for
Cork have confirmed that. Cork have confirmed the departure of senior football manager Ronan McCarthy. The Douglas native steps down despite having a year remaining on his term. All-Ireland minor winning manager Bobby O'Dwyer is among the favourites to replace McCarthy.
We also have got a change made with Kerry. We knew that Fintan O'Sullivan wasn't going to stay on as manager, but they've turned to Waterford for their next boss.
They have indeed. The former Waterford All-Star Steve Malumphey is set to be confirmed as the new Kerry senior hurling boss. He's the preferred candidate of their county board to succeed Fintan O'Connor and will be put forward for ratification later this month. Tournament debutant Leona Maguire helped Europe retain the Solheim Cup last night. The Cavan golfer was the top point scorer of the tournament with 4.5 as Europe beat the United States 15-13 in Toledo. Maguire was the first Irish woman to play in the tournament ever and said it's a dream come true.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible week. It was a dream come true to be here, but to go and win a Solheim Cup on American soil is just, I mean, you can't even imagine. We've had a phenomenal team this week from top to bottom, and this is an experience I'll probably never forget.
And to finish this out, Rich, tell us about this new World 12s competition, and also we've got some news from the US Open too.
Yeah, World Rugby is seeking extensive consultation following the announcement of a proposed 12-a-side competition. World 12s launched today with the support of former World Cup winning head coaches Steve Hansen and Jake White. It seeks to share 192 of the world's best players across 8 franchises. Backed by a UK-based financial consortium, they claim they'll be able to attract €290 million in revenue. But World Rugby say they have concerns regarding player welfare and how the proposed competition would fit into the existing calendar. And US Open quarterfinals very much underway in New York. Men's second seed Daniel Medvedev took a 2-sets-to-love lead against Botic van der Zandschulp, but the Dutch player took the third 6-4. It's still going with serve in the fourth, Medvedev leading by 4-3. Later, Felix Auger-Aliassime plays Carlos Alcaraz, while the women's second seed Anastasia Sabalenka goes up against French Open champion Barbora Krejcikova, and Alina Svitolina goes up against the Canadian teenager Leila Fernandez.
And we still have time before we finish out the news round. Tell us about the Ireland squad. Crucial game coming up for the women's team in their bid to qualify for the World Cup next week.
Yeah, trio of games upcoming over in Parma. Ireland Sevens captain Lucy Mulhall included in that 28-woman Ireland squad for that World Cup qualifying tournament. She's one of 3 uncapped players alongside Mary Healy and Sam Monaghan in the squad. Ireland opened that campaign against Spain next week. Then they have games in Italy and Scotland, and they are all looking to book a place in October's World Cup.
Cheers, Richie. Ireland expected to play with a 3-5-1. Alan Brown supporting Adam Ida up front. We'll continue our build-up ahead of the Republic of Ireland against Serbia when we come back after this short break.
The News Round on Off the Ball
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
On Wednesday, September 8th,